When did you stop feeling intimidated by the blank page?
What do you mean stop?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think sometimes the blank page still gets me, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just trying to be a professional. You can't sit around and wait for inspiration to strike. You got a deadline to hit. You got a client to make happy, so you got to reach in, pull from your knowledge and your experience, and just get going. And then it's every blank page is an opportunity to do something new or push your skills to a different level.
Working with a blank white page, it's a little intimidating, I feel that, sometimes just the advantage with digital illustration, you could just simply just change the color to maybe like a dark gray, dark purple.
Yeah, sometimes I work on a gray.
Right. Yeah. And now you kind of have to maybe instead of starting with black ink traditionally, that's how you would do it. I'd start with the light pink or a light orange, and it just it breaks the tension in that space. So something that works for me.
What's it like working on a team versus working as a solo illustrator?
Oh, well, first of all, when you look around at the other illustrators, they have different styles and different techniques. So, it can be inspirational and it can be a learning experience. You might see a process or a technique that you didn't know about. And that encourages you to try different stuff. It also gives you a sense of security if you're working on a project and you think, wow, maybe I'm not getting it, but the other guys are there too. So it's not all on my shoulders, and that's great to have.
It's always fun when there's a project that there's a couple people in the mix and that this is like round one and they want to see different looks, so you can do your thing and not necessarily
it allows,
too much about the client. Obviously you're reading the brief and trying to follow it, but like they're gonna get different looks from all of us.
Yeah, and you can just focus on your thing. You don't have to be like, well, what should I do? What style should I go with? You can just focus on either something that you're really good at or something you just really want to do, because you know that the other illustrator is going to bring something totally different to the table.
Exactly what you guys said. Really, I mean, you rely on the strengths of others, and you bring something fresh to the table, or something new to the table, or something complementary, that would work well alongside my fellow illustrators here. So
yeah, and there's times when maybe you're stuck, you hit a wall, and you can reach out to one of the other guys and say, hey, how are you doing? Like, can I look at what you're up to? And that's immensely helpful to spark like a new direction or path for you.
There's always a place for healthy competition to take place. I mean, at the end, really, it's all like it's always been like a good family atmosphere here. That at the end, you're just happy. Somebody pulled through, and to know that you collaborated in one way or another is still kind of a sense of satisfaction for sure. Just to be involved, get your hands dirty in the project, and so yeah, there's room for everything and everyone here.
How much traditional experience do you bring to working in digital illustration?
You're working on a project right now where it involves like a graffiti style.
Yeah, it's kind of a spray paint kind of look. So I'm really approaching it as if I were doing it with a spray can. Like, how would I do that line? How, when they spray paint, they just use the big broad lines, and that's it. So I'm really trying to, I'm still using a tablet, but I'm imagining what it would be like to do it with a can of spray paint.
Yeah, and it looks best when it's one motion. Mm-hmm. Like if you have to stop in the middle and then do it again, like in real life with a graffiti can, it's going to look busted. Mm-hmm. And on the computer,
you're not doing a perfect circle with a graffiti can. It's going to be a little.
But that's what makes it, right? I mean, that's what brings value or quality to a piece. Again, we talked about how we all grew up loving that style or these traditional styles because of those imperfections. That comes along with the analog or traditional work. So
I'd say in general, my main process is pretty much, it comes from traditional comic book art. And you kind of do a blue line sketch, you pencil over that, you ink over your pencils. I just apply it to Photoshop layers now instead of doing it on Bristol board or comic book paper. It's the same process.
It's just a medium, and the thinking behind it is really something that's like way more basic and fundamental, and doesn't necessarily change too much when we move across mediums. So I think we're going to touch on that in our workshop. If you have an iPad or a laptop with you, you can certainly use those things, but You know, I think some of us are just going to be having our sketchbooks out and just kind of talking about like, well, where do you start in this process, and where do you take it, and how do you get there,
Yeah,
and what are some different ways to think about it?
What's something you have learned that made a big impact on your illustration career?
I would see these illustrations and they'd have these splatters and stuff. I was like, how are they doing that? And then I finally just actually splattered some ink onto a piece of paper, scanned it in, made it into a Photoshop brush, made it into an element that I could go back and grab. And that was kind of game changer for me. Like, oh, wow, I can create all these different textures and stuff. I can either, create it myself in the real world and kind of scan it in and use it. Or obviously there's companies that make some cool brushes and stuff. But I kind of try to keep it simple. If I need texture and stuff, I just kind of do it by hand. I find that when I use kind of brushes, it can get overdone and it doesn't look natural to me. I find it better if I want a rough line, I'll just go back in there by hand and make it a little rougher.
Color has always been a big deal for me and not a particular strength of mine. So that's one thing that I rely heavily on when I comes to digital illustration. Just making sure, or the beauty of having different layers. Something as simple as layers, organizing your layers, knowing which colors or color schemes go with what. And you present different options, man, and it's a click of a button. Traditionally, that's not necessarily the case. Right.
Can you tell us about the importance of adding storytelling to your illustration?
Don't just draw the thing in the brief that it's said to draw. You're imagining something, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to give it more character. I'm trying to imagine, just telling a story. That's all it really is. I just want a compelling story. It's got to pop off the page. You don't want really, well, sometimes you can have things flat. That's a style. But in general, for what I do, it needs to pop off the page. It needs to grab your attention. It can't just be a pig. He's got to have some kind of personality. Something's got to be creative about it. So it's just not a flat, boring image. It's just try to push it as far as an illustration can go. Is that angle crazy enough? Is that hand reaching out far enough? Push different contrasts and just really, so it isn't just a run-of-the-mill pig. As you say, there can be drawing something and it's a symbol of something, or you can really put some life into it. That's usually what I'm trying to do. Always asking myself, is it pushed far enough, and usually it's not. You can push further.
In a way, it has nothing to do with the technique, and it has to do with like, what are these characters you're creating, or what is the story you're telling? What's the best mode in terms of style of expressing that story? Like that all exists in your work, and I think that's why our clients are drawn to it. That's why like I'm a fan of it. That's why I want to be a part of this team and be part of a collaborative environment where we foster that and we don't stop at the bizarro flat version of the work. We try and take it to that fun level.
I'm always trying to infuse all my influences into a piece. And I think once I do that, you're seeing kind of my journey as an artist. And I think that's what people relate to. They can kind of see like, oh, I know where this guy's coming from. I've been influenced by some of this stuff too. And I can see that. I think that's what really kind of draws people in.
What's your balance of leaning on your technical skills versus trying to keep illustration fun?
One of the best compliments you could receive as an artist is when somebody says, man, it looks like you had fun doing that. That's a great compliment. When they appreciate not only the end result, but the process, because really that is the art. The art is the act of doing it, right? Is the process. The final piece is the byproduct of art to me, right? And then you're going back to the point of doing all those sound effects or doing all those facial expressions when you're doing these characters, and that's really part of the innocence growing up. Like I'm pretty sure all of us, we've been drawing since kinder. I flunked kinder because I was drawing too much. That's what my mom said. So and we just never stopped. Just like everybody draws at kinder. And when you're 5 years old, everybody draws.
Everyone's drawing.
We just never stopped. And we never stopped making those expressions as we draw. We never stopped making those sound effects as we draw. And so to have that, or have our clients, or have the people that like our stuff pick up on those little subtleties, man, it's a compliment.
What are you excited for someone to learn from you at Into the Woods?
I plan on breaking out some files, showing you all my layers, showing things I've never, showing the rough beginnings that I don't think I've ever shown anyone.
It's so cool.
So it's kind of exciting to share that with people and kind of see the reaction. And
'Cause when it's a final piece, you just see, when it's working, you just see the final piece, and it looks great, and it's doing what it needs to do. But then to break it apart into its components makes it a little bit more digestible to see like what's actually happening here.
I was at a conference somewhere talking to some people about my work, and they were shocked to know that final piece wasn't where I started. And they were relieved to hear that, like, no, it's rough. It can be really crappy looking for a while till it hits that point. And the relief on their face was like, oh, I don't have to just make a perfect image right out of the gate. So I hope to share some of that. It doesn't have to be amazing first line. It can sometimes take a while to see the beauty in your piece.